Happy Friday, everyone. You can tell it's Friday because I'm rocking my bright orange Friday shirt. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to dive into the infinitives, what an infinitive looks like, how do we use them in English, and then how are they used also in Spanish. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's jump right into it. So first things first, what is an infinitive? So an infinitive is a verb that is not conjugated. Now, what does it mean when a verb is conjugated? The way I view conjugation is when we conjugate a verb, it tells us two distinct things. A, it tells us who is doing the action, and B, when they are doing the action. Now, when I say when, I don't specifically mean like at what time. I just mean past, present, or future. I had to go in that direction. So past, present, or future. It tells us generally when this is happening as well as who is performing the action. So I have an example here of a verb that is conjugated and a verb that is not conjugated in English. Let's take a look at them. So first things first, it's I walked is the verb. So we know who is doing the action. The person would be I in this situation. Walked, we know it's past tense. We can decipher that because it has the ED at the end. Whereas over here I have just to walk, simple, plain. It doesn't tell us who is walking. It doesn't tell us when they were walking. So this is our infinitive. In English, the infinitive, we put to and then we put the verb. All right, Spanish is the opposite. Spanish takes the word and then adds something to the end. All right, and there's three different options for the infinitive in Spanish: AR, ER, and IR. So let's take a quick look at what those verbs look like in Spanish to get some examples. So we'll start here with our AR. Caminar. All right, entrar also would be an infinitive verb. This verb, caminar, we don't know who is doing it. We don't know when it's happening. We just know caminar. Same with entrar, right? It doesn't give us any info as to who or when. So these are unconjugated infinitive verbs, ER ending. We have examples here: comer, correr, and then ir, salir, and escribir are some more examples of infinitive Spanish verbs. So like I said, English, to in front of the verb; Spanish, ending, AR, ER, or IR. If you see a word that ends in IR or AR, it is going to be a verb in the infinitive. Most times, 99% of the time for ER as well, there is like poder, right, which means power as well as to be able to. So a couple wonky examples, but generally speaking, these are your infinitive verb only endings. All right, so now we're going to dive into when do we use the infinitive. It's all well and good that you can identify the infinitive, but when are we going to actually use the infinitive? And probably the most used example I can think of personally is the verb that comes second in a phrase when we have two verbs together will be put in the infinitive. All right, so in English I have here, I want to study Spanish. That's my phrase in English. In Spanish, that's quiero estudiar español. To study here is my infinitive verb in English because we have that to in front of the verb. In Spanish, my infinitive right here, AR. So they translate exactly the same word for word. And then I want is right here. I want, yo quiero, está ahí. It's right there as well. And we do the same thing for even if the first verb is in the past tense, right? So she decided to listen to her mom. Ella decidió escuchar a su mamá. So that's she decided to listen. Here we have it, to, and then listen, or just escuchar, that AR ending. Could be ER as well, it could be IR as well, depending on what verb we have there. But when your first verb is conjugated, your second verb isn't, you will use the infinitive in that second verb. Another example I have here is for prepositions. All right, now I only put three. There are so many options for this one. I really recommend you dive into Google, find some lists online. There are plenty of them posted where you can kind of get a better understanding of this. I put some examples here. So, for example, with para, estudio mucho para sacar buenas notas. That means I study a lot to get good grades. This para here is kind of like a explanation. It extends a little bit, explains or responds to why. So when we translate this, you can look up para in a dictionary, an English to Spanish dictionary. Sometimes it will have to, and the reason why they include to is for sentences like this, right? So when we see para sacar and the people are translating word for word, I study a lot to get good grades. Really, sacar would be our two there, but if people feel better having it in para, that's fine also. So after para, after this preposition, you'll have your infinitive, gracias por venir. This is an example now where in English, it doesn't exactly translate word for word. So if I was to translate this word for word in English, it would be gracias por viniendo. And remember in the present progressive video, I explained we never really use venir in the present progressive. So gracias por venir, thanks for coming. Just kind of how they say that in Spanish. There's no really getting around it. And then we have actuo, actúo sin pensar. I act without thinking. Same kind of thing that we had above. Sometimes the ing, we use it in English. They use it in Spanish, just the infinitive. That's, yeah, differences in language. Another option to use the infinitive in Spanish are for our modal verbs. So poder. Poder, like I said earlier, is to be able to. Technically, when fully laid out, it's can. Yo puedo, I can. Tú puedes, you can. That all comes from poder. So I can run. I have right here in Spanish. That'd be puedo correr. So the second verb, kind of like our rule from earlier, the second verb is in the infinitive. And it's not, what's interesting here is you would think it'd be I can to run, but because it is this modal verb in English, you don't include the to. Same with deber. So I wouldn't say I should to study. It's just I should study, and debo estudiar in Spanish. So the infinitive, it's already one verb conjugated. If you remember that one rule, you'll be good. One verb conjugated. The second one that we connect to it is the infinitive always. All right. So here we have when we use the action as the subject. So my phrase here is smoking is bad. Fumar es malo. Smoking is bad. Here we're not talking about the action of smoking, right? We're not talking about that action. We are using that as our subject. The action of smoking is bad. That is the subject of the sentence. When we're using the action as the subject, we're going to keep it in the infinitive. All right. And I have here, leer es útil, reading is useful. Reading, once again, in that situation would be our subject. And for that reason, we use the infinitive. All right. And then this is the last one. And this is my future trick. I'm going to make a video on this later on that explains how we use this. But in English, a lot of times, instead of saying will, because will demonstrates future in English, I will read later. We say going to. I'm going to the store later. I'm going to drive to grandma's house at night. So in Spanish, they do the same thing, but instead of I am going to, which would be estoy, I am going, estoy yendo a, and that, like we said in the present progressive video, we never use yendo and voy and ir for present progressive. What we have in Spanish is voy a and then the infinitive. So voy a reír, vas a bailar. All right. Voy a reír is I am going to laugh with the infinitive next to it. I am going, oh, I didn't even see correr here. Voy a correr, I'm going to run. Vas a bailar, you are going to dance. All right, so if you see one of these phrases, if you're trying to construct one of these phrases, the last verb you keep in the infinitive, and the first verb kind of tells us who is then performing the action. All right, and when as well. So for that reason, the first verb is the subject as well as the time. It lets us know when this is happening as well as who is doing the action. So for that reason, the second verb in our other phrases that we looked at before, as well as this phrase, you do not need to conjugate that verb. All right. Like I said earlier, it's Friday. I got my Friday shirt on. I'm getting out of here. Have a good rest of your day. Hope this helped. See y'all on the next one.